Okay, so hi everybody. I'm David Gummer, Chief Product Officer of Redgate Software. Today I'm going to be interviewing Tatiana Krupenya. Tatiana is the CEO of the really popular universal database management tool, DBeaver, and she's a powerful product leader with more than 10 years of experience in developing database management tools, but also driving business growth and building productive teams. And we're going to talk about data management and why it makes sense to share access to your database with your business departments, which some of you might find a little bit scary. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. We're also going to talk about data management and the problems that are associated with managing and controlling access to the database across both technical and business departments. So welcome, Tatiana. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to start by asking you, what are the main challenges that you see in working with data in large enterprises these days?
Hi, David. Thank you for introduction. And actually, we really have a very interesting topic to discuss today because it's true. The modern infrastructure and big enterprises, large enterprises these days, is very complicated. And it's not only because, we have more than one database in our infrastructure. I actually don't meet companies who has less than one, like 3 databases in their infrastructure. It's like more often it's 3, 4, 5, sometimes it's 10. And it's not like one place where all of these databases are located. It's most likely it is something on premise, something in cloud, something in another cloud. It's like a hybrid cloud term, and it's very, very complicated. But what is even more important that, we collected the data for decades. I mean that especially in financial sector and healthcare, we have a huge, like terabytes, petabytes of data that people just keep for a long time. And now they decided that, hey, maybe it's a good time to use it. Maybe it's a great opportunity to make finally a decision based on the data. And they just realized that the standard approach that they had for years, like, hey, can we make this task with our DBAs? Maybe not really good because, you don't have so many DBAs in your company.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, some real issues there about kind of scale and complexity and how that's changing over time. But I guess luckily we have database administrators and data engineers who can solve all of these issues, though, don't we?
The answer is yes and no at the same time, because I don't want to doubt about like professionals, like professional DBAs, professional data engineers. They're really great. But the challenge here that their work mostly focused on like working with database itself. But when we're talking about business decisions or decisions based on the data, it's not this kind of work. It's a work that mostly related to analysis, and we need some special people for that. It has to be data analysts, it can be financial analysts, it has to be like people who are not really the guys who really know database very well. And here is a tricky part because from one hand, we have DBAs who don't like this kind of job. I heard this feedback a lot of time that, I don't want to write a lot of select statements for my database analysts. They're never ending. And on the other hand, we have people who need to work with data, but they don't have access to them. So it's quite challenging.
Yeah. And I guess granting access to the database across that wider range of users is possible, but creates some risk. In your experience, what happens when companies choose to do that?
Yes, it sounds very, very risky. And I know that some companies, especially big ones, especially who are really cared about sensitive data. Actually, in the modern world, everyone is cared about the sensitive data. But if we're talking about like financial things or health insurance or something like that, where people really crazy about that no one will see sensitive data and so on. It can be a big question. But at the same time, what I can see from our experience and how people and enterprises really work with that, most of companies can solve this issue. It's luckily that we have a lot of tools that provided by databases itself, that provided like cloud services for permission management, for user management, for cover all security questions. Of course, it makes the infrastructure even more complex. You know, it's like a big issue to set up this all authorization mechanism, authentication mechanism. And what we see from our users that with all of this stuff, when they decided that, hey, we need to provide the access to the data, how can we do this? It can be safe only if we will use this and that technologies. And they apply these technologies. And after that, the new issue very quickly arises. And it's about like, how can we connect to our database now? It's become so complicated that it's almost impossible. And especially if you don't have a special tool for that. And in DBeaver, we're really focused on these kind of tasks. So we're trying to simplify the life. We see this issue, we see this problem, and we're trying to make the simple interface. We just hide all of background checking and the security stuff on the back end of the application and show people just like a couple of fields where you need to put your, I don't know, credentials for, I don't know, AWS service, and you can start to use it. But the main point here that it's possible. You don't be afraid of this stuff. There are all tools for that, all tools for set up the appropriate level of security and tools to help your users and your employees to work with these databases. And actually, you cannot avoid this. You have to make provide the access, because without that, you will be just you can be ahead of your competitors if you want to make a business decision based on the data.
Yeah, understood. And you talked there about the ways that technology can help to provide broader access and manage the kind of sensitivity of the data, which I'm sure resonates with all of us. But I guess DBAs don't just worry about data leaks and protecting their sensitive data. They might also worry if they're opening up database access to non-technical business users, people perhaps accidentally performing unsafe database operations. Is there a way to avoid that?
It's a good question, actually, because, you know, they cared not only about business users, but about developers and DevOps, and real DBAs are very, very cared about the safety of the database and prefer that no one ever touch this database. Actually, there are a lot of options how to avoid that. And we have already talked about the tools that we have on the database side and on the side of cloud service providers and so on. In DBeaver, we really cared about this stuff, because we know that these days working with data is not a task only for DBAs. It's not only the task for data engineers, it's a task for everyone. And it means that we need to provide the interface where people can safely work together. And it's not like I will create the view for my analysts and give it to them, and they will work only here. In most cases, it doesn't work, because people need to write queries, and they get the reports and analyze it and filter, sort, and all of this. And but anyway, there are a lot of tools. We can make the whole data set read-only. We can secure it with a password. We can actually restrict all unsafe operations. For example, in DBeaver, we have a way to create queries through the Visual Query Builder or integration with OpenAI. And we experimented with that. We tried to create the unsafe stuff for the database through the OpenAI. and we wouldn't able to do this. So, and I can say that, of course, you have to think about that. But if you choose the right tool, most likely no any harm will be for your database.
Okay, and really interesting. And I think it's pretty clear that we need some, some data management tools for our business units. I guess equally, it's clear that the needs or the preferences of different groups, between business analysts and DBAs and DevOps engineers and so on, can be different. So I'm curious. I can see. I think it's pretty obvious the need for kind of UI based tools for business analysts. Do we need similar kind of UI based tools for the more technical users, the DBAs and DevOps and data engineers, or are kind of command line interface based tools more than enough for those audiences?
I've heard this question a lot of times, and every time I said that, hey, of course, you remember maybe like 20, 30 years ago, developers, software developers, wrote the code in a notepad, and it was fine. But was it actually? I don't think so. And I'm not I don't think that people have to be so skeptical about the UI tools for DBA tasks or DevOps tasks or the software development tasks, because it's not a way to show that you are not professional or that you are lazy or they don't understand how to do your job. It's just a way to make your job more efficient. I mean, when you can just press the button and get the immediate result, instead of writing 30, 40 lines of code or queries. And does it mean that it's bad? Maybe it's even better if you can spend your time for something more useful than for these routine operations and for these routine tasks. And it's great when you don't need to think about SQL dialects, for example, when we switch to another database, or when you don't need to remember how to run backup or dump of the database, and you can just press the button and get the results. And I believe that it's almost the same in the Redgate, because Redgate provides a lot of tools for database administration just to make it more efficient. So, and it's absolutely the same story about UI tools. It's just the way to make your work more efficient.
Understood. And then what's your view of how can people make kind of best use of the time that's freed up there? So how does it help, for example, in team collaboration in working with databases? What's the impact in that area?
As I said, what we can see right now, that the working with data actually moved from the deep technical specialists to everyone, to business units, to marketing department, to sales departments, and so on. Yeah. And before we thought that maybe Excel spreadsheet or some standard CRM are more than enough for this kind of tasks. But now we can see that more and more companies prefer to work with raw data because it gives you much more flexibility. It means that you are not don't need to initiate the whole long process for weeks to get the results. You can just write the query or select statement by yourself. And of course, the business units cannot work independently. We cannot just say, hey, DBAs, we don't need you anymore. Just go away. No, of course not. We need all of these great people who can save and who can set up all our environment and who can care about that and who can create for us very complicated stuff. And but at the same time, it's very nice when you can talk about the data on the same language. I mean, when you don't need to translate from technical language to the language of normal people, and when you can just, share the results of your work, when you can just ask someone to share the script with you. I mean, that it's easier when you work in one infrastructure, in one environment, use the same tools, and you don't need to think even about that. You just work. And again, it's also about efficiency. So yes, and I believe that we don't need to like construct this wall between technical guys and business guys. In the modern world, especially when we are talking about the data, we need to like remove this wall. We need to work together with that.
Thank you. I think you make a really kind of compelling case for the benefits of better collaboration, and certainly that strand you were talking about around democratizing access to data, making it more accessible to people in different roles is absolutely a trend that we see pretty regularly across our enterprise customers, especially those who are kind of more mature in their journey with data and finding more and faster ways to drive value out of it. So Tatiana, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing your insights, and I'm sure everyone will have really benefited from what you've shared. So really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It was really a pleasure.